Howdy, this is Tubalcain again. Recently, SHOPDOGSAM, and I hope you have viewed many of his videos, he has some great ones out there, challenged me to a video that would show my favorite tools. Well, I have over 10,000 tools, not including my cutting tools, and there's just no way I can narrow it down to my favorite tool, because that would be like asking me to name my favorite grandchild, and I'm not going to do that. But I'm just going to show you some of the tools that I do use the most often and why I like them. And as you can see, just from this panel alone, the number of tools that I do have, and I hope this doesn't sound like I'm bragging, but I have always liked tools and am a member of the Midwest Tool Collectors Club, and I have sold most of those woodworking type tools, and these are the tools that I use in my basement shop. I have equal number of tools in two different garage shops, and then there's an awful lot in drawers and toolboxes, and I may show the toolboxes someday like Keith Fenner does, because there seems to be a voyeuristic tendency for men to want to know what's in toolboxes. This is where I keep some of my more common everyday tools, pliers and screwdrivers and things like that. And then right above that are punches. This would represent about 2% of all the different punches of various kinds that I have. So these are some of the things that are within my immediate reach. At my basement maple workbench, and perhaps a workbench should be included as one of my favorite tools, the workbench along with the Colombian vise. SHOPDOGSAM recently recited a poem. I'm not sure if he made the poem up or not, but it was entitled "God Made a Machinist." And I always like poetry, and I'm going to read you this statement here by Thomas Carlyle, 1831. It's not really poetry, but in a way it is. It's so well done, regarding tools and how important they are to mankind and the progress that we've made over the thousands of years. Man is a tool-using animal. Weak in himself and of small stature, he stands on a basis at most for the flattest soled of some half-square foot, insecurely enough, has to straddle out his legs lest the very winds supplant him. Feeblest of bipeds, 3 quintals are a crushing load for him. The steer of the meadow tosses him aloft like a waste rag. Nevertheless, he can use tools, can devise tools, and with these the granite mountain melts into light dust before him. He kneads glowing iron as if it were soft paste. Seas are his smooth highway, winds and fire his unwearying steeds. Nowhere do you find him without tools. Without tools he is nothing. With tools he is all. Thomas Carlyle, 1831. I happen to like hammers and probably own at least 100 of them. Many of them are claw hammers, but here are some of my favorites, and a small ball peen and a machinist hammer. I do happen to like the dead blow type hammers. These are 2 of them, but I have had trouble. This is a Blue Point. See the crack here in this urethane or whatever this material is, and I had several others, soft hammers, and these are filled with shot, usually lead shot, so they do not rebound. But I've had some of these hammers reduced to their steel skeleton and have been very disappointed in the quality, and they were name brands as well. Maybe this is under guarantee. It's a Blue Point. I wouldn't know where to do anything about it though. And here's some other soft hammers. I love a copper hammer. I absolutely adore lead hammers of all kinds, but this little brass hammer here is one of my favorites, and it's so handy on the bench to use with punches and letter stamps, because it does not cause the stamp to go twang and disappear across the shop when you strike it. So use a brass hammer when you're striking punches. I probably own 50 micrometers of various sizes, but these are 2 of my favorites. This is one that my dad gave me when I was in high school, a Starrett. But I particularly like the digital type of Starrett, and I noticed that SHOPDOGSAM liked one of these mechanical digital ones. And this is an expensive tool, but I do like it. I do not care about the electronic micrometers, but this is probably my favorite micrometer. I like to use this when I'm making videos because I can show it to the camera, and it appears and doesn't, it's not so shiny where it reflects the light. This Mitutoyo 6-inch height gauge dial type is really one of my very favorites, and I use it all the time. It should be used on a surface plate, but sometimes I just use it on the wooden bench if the bench is cleaned off, because if I'm doing something semi-accurate, this will still be so much more accurate on a wooden bench than what would be any other type of layout tool. And you can very quickly set it. Got a carbide scriber on the end. I do not care for the older style with a vernier scale on it. You can throw all of those away, but I like the dial one. I do not own a digital one, but you know, this is so satisfactory for what I use, and it is 6 inches high. Get yourself one of those. You may not consider this a tool, but I sure do like a common cheap calculator, and it's handy in every shop. And you know, when I was in college, we had to use these slide rules, and I absolutely hated those. That's what I think of a slide rule. I do a lot of small work and fine work, and I do a lot of measuring and laying out, and here are 4 of my favorites. I like this little Starrett 4-inch that was my dad's, and here's another little Starrett. I particularly like these little die maker squares, and this one can be adjusted out of square, perfect for pattern making. And a depth gauge. These are real handy, and I have multiples of all of this as well. And off of the subject, I really do like this little torch for fine soldering or heating up something real small, and it lights instantly. Just a handy little tool that's refillable. Perhaps you have one. I've mentioned transfer punches in many of my videos, and here's the fractional and numbers. I do not own the letters. I think I would very seldom use them, but these are particularly handy in any machine shop. And I do like my little Fowler automatic center punch to keep in my pocket, and a little Brown & Sharp scriber with a carbide tip. Had that for many years. When I do a video like this, I realize that I guess I am a hoarder. You know, why would I have dozens of 6-inch scales? You can only use one at a time, but I have one on every machine, or usually 2 on every machine. But I do happen to prefer the 6-inch that is flexible. And I like the side that is in 1/8 and 1/16. Never do I use the finer side, probably because of my age, and I think when I need to measure something that fine, I go to different types of tools. But I love the flexible rulers. Satin chrome finish is mandatory. I don't know why I don't just throw away all the plain steel ones at the end of this video, but of course, being a hoarder, I will not. This may seem simplistic, but a common 10-inch mill file is one of the most important tools you have in any shop. A sharp one. Throw away your dull ones instantly. Do not keep them. And of course, a file card, and I like this Colton's type. I don't think you can buy these anymore. Particularly handy, and you need to have a file at every lathe, every machine, and several on the bench. And I think I'm going to do an entire video on files, because I do really use files all the time. I believe I'm going to do a video eventually on hacksaws and hacksaw blades, because that is a handy tool to have in the shop. This is French made. I believe it's the only tool I have that's made in France, but it's a nice hacksaw frame, and I would have hundreds and hundreds of blades. And I have many hacksaws so that I can have different blades in the different saws without the aggravation of changing blades all the time. I have a nice selection of deburring tools. Don't particularly care for this type, even though I got 3 of them. I like a standard burr knife like that, but my favorite is this homemade one with a cast aluminum handle and a 6 fluted high-speed steel center drill and a, or not center drill, countersink. Very handy for deburring holes. This is one that I just use all the time, and here's the original one I had made up, and the tack is there so it won't roll off the table. I need to put a tack into this one. So get yourself a bunch of deburring tools like this. Maybe not that many. I suppose I have 50 or more pocket knives, and here's just a few I keep on the bench. I particularly like these Klein's knives. I don't know why I've got so many of them. I like a Sloyd knife. Raise your hand if you know what a Sloyd knife is. But that's handy to have on the bench as well. If you're over 50 or maybe over 35, you've got to have yourself an optivisor, and don't accept any cheap imitation. The number 3 lens is really the best, but because I have several others, and the focal length varies, and I like this little magnifying glass that I've had for years. It's got a magnet on it, and you can actually lay that on top of a vernier scale, if you still have vernier scales, or a ruler, and it really helps you to read it. Nice tool. Maybe it's not a tool, but I'm going to call it a tool. I absolutely love this Kalamazoo with a Balder motor 2x48" belt sander. I own 2 of them. The other one's out in the garage, but this is just a tool that is right on the bench, and I can turn it on at any given moment and deburr or form an angle, and sometimes I even use it for tool grinding. I have a third one as well that is made by Dayton. Not nearly as good, but still somewhat useful for deburring, but it rattles like a Model T when I turn it on. We all use Allen wrenches or hex keys, whatever you want to call them, really just about every day, and I made up this little kit here years ago with regular Allen wrenches in the front, and then the T-handle, and then these screwdriver type with the ball end on them on the back. And they're real easy to find this way, because I have thousands and thousands of these Allen wrenches, but I also like them in the little kits. I particularly like this kind. I have many of these. I paint them red when they are metric. That's my metric. And I like the ball end, and I've told this story before, but I'm going to repeat it. It bears repeating. My brother was a teacher as well, and he had the Bondus brand Allen wrenches there in the shop, and one day a young man came up to him and said, "Mr. Peterson," his name was Peterson too, "I did a big favor for you." And my brother said, "Well, what's that?" And he said, "Well, you know, all of your Allen wrenches were worn out and rounded off on the end, so I took them all to the grinder and ground them off smooth for you. Aren't you glad I did that?" I absolutely love Dremel tools, and I own many of them. I don't care 2 hoots about most of the accessories that are available in the stores, and I consider some of them absolutely worthless, but what I really like is the little abrasive cutoff wheels. And I even keep one of these, this is actually a Ryobi, hanging up on the tool board all the time, plugged in, ready to go. And these little abrasive wheels are just the greatest thing in the world for cutting off small rod and wire, and hardened things like snap rings and dowel pins, and I love it for cutting off brass tubing and things like that. So these are great tools. This accessory on the end, the cutoff wheel. And you say, how can this man afford all these tools? You know, I go to garage sales and I go to auctions, and often you see these at garage sales for next to nothing. That's why I have so many of them. Also, I don't consider these to have a very long life. If you use them steadily, you know, they're going to burn up promptly on you. So you need to have a bunch of them. I got some out in the garage too. But I would never pass one up. Even if I had 100 of these and I saw one at a garage sale for a reasonable price, you know, I would grab it. They are a mess here because of the wires and everything, but I just keep these in the drawer as backups. Go to garage sales, go to auctions, pick up used tools. The last one of these I bought was just hidden in a box, and I think it cost $1, and I brought it home wondering if it would work, and of course it did. It worked perfectly. So That is your source for tools. Don't go to the big box stores. Don't go to Sears. Get the used stuff. People are dying constantly, and this stuff is up for auction, or the widow puts it out in the driveway and sells it super cheap. As you can see, I have a lot of tools and I can't pinpoint it down to one favorite, but here's a couple other things. I do like a Sharpie marker, and I like these little flashlights, and many of them are LEDs now, and even if you let them run, forget to turn them off, the batteries don't wear down so quickly. If this video comes across as bragging, then I'm going to remove it, because I don't mean to brag, but I just wanted to show off, and this was Shop Dog Sam's request. Now if I get 100 or more people asking for this, I will go ahead and do a toolbox tour like Mr. Fenner did, Keith Fenner, and but I don't want that to seem as bragging too, but sometimes that's interesting to people to see what you got, because I only showed you 2% of what I have, and I'm not going to go into my garages. It is the middle of winter here in Illinois, and it's 15 degrees out, so I don't really go into my garage as much during the winter. This is Tubalcain saying so long for now.